I've got these things, but I've got no one to share them with.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
You know, and I'll go to my dad example of my dad. Maybe this will help too, and then I'll be done with this. But my father, growing up, he spent a lot of time with us boys doing some specific things. As the older we got, the more time he spent with us. Actually, to the time when I was a senior, he spent the most time with me ever in my life. When I was a senior in high school, we just did a lot of things together, trips together, hunting trips, fishing trips, you know, spiritual trips, as in like going to conferences and stuff. But I realized that after a few years in the ministry, how much time my father had spent with me. And I talked to him about it when I had my own son. And he said, Michael, he said, your mom and I purposely pulled back on doing as much as we could have done in the ministry until you children were gone, because we knew we would have the opportunity when you're gone to put as much time as we want in.
Sure.
And, you know, now my dad's so much more busy than I remember him being. You know, I'll go home to visit him. He's got so much more going on than when I was a kid, but he's got all that extra time.
Yeah.
And so he purposely chose to do less, have less, be less, so to speak, in people's eyes, so that he can invest in his kids. And then he had time later to do those things. So I would really encourage men out there, don't have a hobby unless your kids or your family's involved. Don't let your hobby and your man friends take you away from your family. Make your family and time with them your hobby, with your wife. And if you need to, find a job that gives you more time with your family, even if it means scraping by. And, you know, as long as you can get by, which I think you can, if God, and I'm not saying do it without seeking God's face, but if God allow you to do it, you will not regret it. But yeah, in a nutshell, the only way to balance it is to go to God, and Jesus was perfectly balanced.
Yeah.
So
right, 100%. Like you
the
said,
more we're like
100%
him,
man,
the more
God.
we have everything in perspective and balance.
Absolutely. So I guess I was going to say, you know, about a man like leading his family. That's one of the things that I've talked with a lot of guys about the most, that it seems like most men are lost on, like practically, how do I lead my family? But I have a feeling that your answer may be very similar to the last one.
Yeah, that's where I was going. You know, it's amazing to me, Brother Jake. I'll be very transparent right here. It's amazing to me how many rough areas, so to speak, you know, that I thought that, you know, maybe my wife needs help in this area, or we've got some conflict in this area, and I need to figure out how to fix her. As I've sought God every time reveals to me that it's more like a mirror of me. And when he fixes what he needs to fix in me, the rest falls into place. Both with my wife and my children, my ministry, everything. And if I'm not walking with God, I cannot lead. I may lead in the flesh and be a technical leader, but that doesn't mean that's not going to hurt me down the road.
Right.
But when I walk with God and he makes me who I need to be, whatever kind of leader that is, and I think it's different for every man, because every man is different himself and has a different wife, and you come from different backgrounds and all those things. You have different battles. You have different struggles spiritually. You have different experiences in your past. You have different battle tests you're going through now. It's different for everybody. So the only way that I can be the proper leader is if I have confidence in my walk with God and what he leads me as. I have to be the leader in my home, but if I'm not with him, I may lead out of anger. I may lead out of fear. I may lead out of determination, whatever. And that is not good. But when I walk with him, when I'm close to him, I have confidence that if I tell my wife, God tells us we're going here, it's not just a whim. It's not just it's what God is saying. And so I have confidence that she's going to follow. Even if at first the emotions of a woman, which are very typical, lead her to be like, oh, "Are you serious?" I can get through that, and I can comfort her because I know that God has told me.
Mm.
Um, and of course, like I said earlier, that comes with learning and just to discern God's voice. I have made those forward moves. This is what God said, and had to backtrack because it was my own heart speaking. But
Yeah.
but you have to grow in it, and as you grow, what's going to happen is your wife is going to learn that you do hear God's voice when she sees the miracles that God does in your own life and in your own. When she sees what God is doing in you, then she'll be much more willing to follow because she'll
Yeah.
be confident that you know what God's saying, not just this is my husband's agenda and he's telling me it's what God says.
Yeah. No, that makes a ton of sense. That's and I used the word discernment a couple times, and I think that's a really good.
Yes,
Even for the balance thing and just the whole topic in general is discernment and being led by the Spirit.
yes, sir. I think Brother Jake, here's the problem. It's our problem in our churches in America. It's the problem in our homes in America. It's a problem in our own lives. We forgot how to we have forgotten how to be still and know that He's God. We're so busy. We've got so much going on. Most of it's for greed. And it's a culture, and it's kind of hard to get out there in a lot of ways. I mean, you work at a company and they demand this many hours per week, and why? Because they're built on profit,
Right.
and so it's the whole culture is built on it. It's not enough, not that it's never enough. And I'm not saying that God calls everybody to this, but God says in Matthew 5, 6, 7, 8, the Sermon on the Mount, He says at the end of it, if you want to build your house upon a rock, this is what you got to do. These things that I've said. And He says very plainly, very simply, take no thought for tomorrow.
Yeah.
That can almost sound harsh, but that's just what He says. And that's that's a hard thing to do.
It is.
I know for sure. I won't be dogmatic and say it's for every Christian. I know for sure it's for every missionary because He's talking to the disciples who are going to become apostles, which is, our word missionary is the same word in a different, I think it's Latin. It just means sent one. When you're a missionary sent out to do God's work, I'm confident that that's what those chapters are what God asks of us. It's pretty much a pattern, but I think it's a pattern of discipleship. I mean, this is pretty much His first teachings to His disciples who are coming out of the world and into His kingdom in a sense of not just by faith eternally, but by faith temporally. He starts us off with the Beatitudes. In my opinion, He's just trying to get them to understand that their thinking has to be different.
Yeah.
What it means to be blessed in God's eyes versus what the world thinks is blessed. And when they can understand He thinks differently and you got to think differently for the kingdom, then He starts telling them all these things in which their lives have got to be different. But we're so rushed and we're so after everything else, we have forgotten in America how to seek God. Because we haven't sought God, especially in our churches, His Spirit is not prevalent. It is not transforming lives. And so we, in our worldly wisdom, have followed the methods of the world and business world. And we've tried to come up with methods that would give us an appearance of the Spirit of God working.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's just created more emptiness in us the same way it does in the world. And the answer is to be still and know He's God, to seek Him. He'll give us all the wisdom we need for our home, all the wisdom we need for our work, all the wisdom we need for our churches, and we'll begin to have fruit. What the problem is, Brother Jake, is we've set up assembly line Christianity, and we've put out some molds, and we've tried to put them in assembly line and produce a product from an assembly line and try to claim that that's fruit. A great man of God, my father, Paul Williams, gave me this thought, and God's worked on me multiple times through it, but an assembly line can never produce fruit, never. Only trees produce fruit, and a tree that produces fruit is planted by the rivers of water, and he brings fruit in his season. It's not an instantaneous thing. Yeah. There's seasons, but that only comes when he's planted by the rivers of water. In other words, he's in his law doth he meditate day and night. And when we start having that in our churches, and I think part of what God, let me apply this to right now. God's trying to slow America down. He's trying to slow our families down. He's trying to slow America down. He's trying to help us. He's giving us the opportunity in this time to find him. It's just a matter of whether we're willing to do that. I think we're so busy. We're so used to being so busy we can't slow down. But he's trying to, so that we can find him. And when we do, we are transformed. When we are transformed, we bear fruit, because we become like him and we start bearing fruit. And then you'll see the power of the Spirit of God move in our Christian world. When we stop trying to produce a factory product by using worldly methods, and we start seeking him.
Man, that's really good, because it's like during the middle of all this, that is something that God has been working on my heart specifically about, like slowing down and, listening to him and finding him in the middle of quiet. And it's amazing that you say that, because, it's something I've tried to start realizing in the middle of this. So that's incredibly helpful. I appreciate that.
Yes, sir.
Well, I appreciate you. It's just been an incredible conversation. I appreciate you taking the time to talk to us. Where can people go online to find you? Your social media or your website, Gems? How can people contact you?
I lost you for a second. I think you asked where to go to learn more about our ministry and such. And
yes, sir.
Yes, our website, gemsforchrist.com. They can go there, and all the information they should need is on there. If nothing else, there's contact information there. They can contact us directly.
Okay. Are you on social media at all?
Technically, yes, but I will say no. I have.
Okay.
Gems has a Facebook account, and about every 2 years I put something on there.
Okay. All right. Well, that's fair enough. Just, for people who are into all that, just if they want to follow you or something. But no.
We're getting there. I have some people that are helping me try to get stuff updated and a little more consistent.
Well, I get it. In a lot of ways, it goes against the whole be still thing, right?
let me say this. We do have more. In fact, some of our branches of Gems, like Germany and Ghana, they have their own Facebooks, like Gems Ghana Facebook, Gems, I think Gems Germany maybe, and all that stuff is on the website too. They can get connected with that stuff on the website. Okay. Yeah,
that works. Well, thanks again, Brother Mike, for taking the time to talk to us this morning. It's been an absolute pleasure.
It's been a pleasure for me too. Thank you. God bless you.
So like I said, that was, an incredible conversation, and I was incredibly blessed by it. A couple of the things that stood out to me were right near the end, of course, where he talked about God slowing the world down here and maybe trying to get your attention through that. And I know he's done that for me. And even now, it's still tough for me to purposely slow down and get rid of some of the things that I think I need to do. A new book, a new TV show, a new conversation. Even tasks that I do have to finish, that spending some time slowing down is a good thing. He talked about, of course, then some of the hindrances to faith are pride and greed. And I know those are both things that I struggle with as well. A lot of men, most men struggle with some form of pride, but we feel like we can do it on our own. We have something to prove. We want to show people that we can build something or do something better than someone else. There's some competitiveness there. Or also greed, that we want a nice thing, again, maybe to show off to someone else, or to keep up with someone else.